You imagine blue lights and dramatic arrests. In reality, the job begins with briefing notes, equipment checks, legal powers, and the knowledge that strangers may soon depend on decisions you make with incomplete information. Before the uniform comes, an application asking why you want the responsibility. Excitement is not enough when one decision can affect a victim, a suspect, a family, and an investigation for years. Selection tests, communication, integrity, judgment, fitness, and fairness. You must remain measured when someone is angry, frightened, dishonest, confused, or deliberately trying to provoke you. On day one, everyone tries to look certain. Most are not. You quickly learn that confidence must come from law, procedure, practice, and admitting when you do not know something. You study arrest, stop and search, entry, seizure, detention, and use of force powers. The difficult part is deciding whether using a lawful power is also necessary, proportionate, and defensible. Safety training is not about winning fights. It teaches distance, positioning, restraints, safe searching, communication, and teamwork. The goal is to control risk using the least force reasonably necessary. You practice speaking to people who shout, panic, refuse instructions, or insult you. You learn to explain your actions, set boundaries, and listen for the detail that changes the whole incident. Then you fail a scenario. Perhaps you miss a threat, forget a radio update, or explain an arrest badly. Training exposes those weaknesses before they become real mistakes outside the academy. You return to legislation, policy, and tutor feedback. You repeat the scenario, practice structured radio messages, and learn that confidence grows through correction rather than pretending mistakes never happened. When you attest and wear the uniform properly for the first time, it feels heavier than fabric. The public sees authority before personality, and your conduct now reflects on the whole service. Your first briefing contains wanted people, missing persons, vulnerable addresses, domestic abuse risks, stolen vehicles, and unfinished incidents. Before leaving the station, you are already carrying a crowded picture of the area. On patrol, familiar streets look different. You notice damaged doors, unusual vehicles, nervous behavior, and known locations. Good officers stay alert without allowing awareness to become suspicion of everyone. Your first domestic call sounds simple over the radio. Inside, accounts conflict, a child is upstairs, property is damaged, and one person answers for the other. The real risk is rarely obvious immediately. You separate those involved, check for injuries, record first accounts, and activate body-worn video where appropriate. You lower your voice, slow the pace, and stop the argument controlling the room. When the shouting stops, the work continues. You check previous reports, assess domestic abuse risk, identify children or vulnerable adults, and decide whether referrals or protective action are needed after you leave. Back at the station, every action must be recorded. Grounds, observations, evidence, force, safeguarding, and victim contact. Poor wording can weaken a case or create an inaccurate record that follows someone. After midnight, alcohol, loneliness, mental health crises, road collisions, and violence become more common. Fatigue affects officers too, so routines and careful decision-making matter even more. When a suspect runs, adrenaline arrives first. Training tells you to update the radio, give a description, watch traffic, consider containment, and decide whether continuing creates more risk than stopping. The arrest is controlled, not cinematic. You state the grounds, caution the person, use only necessary force, search lawfully, preserve seized property, and monitor their welfare during transport. At custody, the sergeant tests your decision again. Why was arrest necessary? What evidence exists? Are there medical, mental health, substance, or self-harm risks? Detention is never automatic. A shaken victim struggles to speak. You avoid leading questions, allow pauses, clarify important details, and explain the next steps. Their account must remain theirs, even when the radio keeps calling. Then you realize you missed something: a witness, CCTV, an exhibit label, or a gap in your notes. The case may survive, but evidence disappears and the lesson stays. After shift, the station becomes quiet while your mind becomes loud. You replay the decision and wonder how a supervisor, court, or member of the public would view it. Your tutor makes you identify what happened, why it happened, what risk it created, and what must change. Good supervision turns embarrassment into safer behavior. A similar incident gives you another opportunity. This time you separate witnesses, secure footage, preserve evidence, check welfare, explain your plan, and record your rationale as events unfold. Soon you work under constant observation. A phone video may capture the hardest 30 seconds while missing every warning and attempt at de-escalation beforehand. Your professionalism must survive the missing context. Standards matter most when a colleague cuts a corner, speaks inappropriately, or writes something that does not match what you saw. Loyalty cannot mean protecting poor practice from scrutiny. Not every shift involves arrest. You visit shops, schools, vulnerable residents, and community meetings. Those quieter conversations build intelligence and trust before a local problem becomes a major incident. Finding a missing teenager is only the beginning. You must understand why they left, who they were with, whether exploitation is involved, and whether returning home is genuinely safe. Then the radio tone changes. A weapon reported, injuries uncertain, descriptions conflicting. You listen for updates, check your route, and begin forming a plan before arriving. Courage is not rushing blindly through a doorway. You identify cover, contain the area, move the public away, confirm descriptions, and wait for specialist support when waiting is safer. Control staff, response officers, firearms teams, negotiators, ambulance crews, and supervisors each hold part of the picture. Good coordination means sharing verified facts and clearly marking what remains unknown. When the person comes out safely, there is relief rather than celebration. The weapon is secured, welfare checked, arrest considered, and the scene preserved for investigators. Weeks later, you prepare for court using your notebook, statement, exhibits, body-worn video, and disclosure material. Accurate records matter because memory alone is never enough. In the witness box, your timing, wording, observations, and use of powers are challenged. You answer only what you know, distinguish memory from records, and correct mistakes openly. The verdict may disappoint you, but it was never yours to decide. Your duty was to investigate fairly, pursue reasonable lines of inquiry, and present evidence honestly. Over time, grief, abuse, addiction, violence, neglect, and sudden death accumulate. You must notice when vigilance becomes cynicism, or professional distance becomes emotional shutdown. The work follows you home through late finishes, canceled plans, missed meals, replayed decisions, and the habit of scanning every room. The uniform comes off faster than the shift. Good officers use welfare support, supervisors, colleagues, family, and proper rest before exhaustion becomes damage. Asking for help is part of remaining fit to carry police powers safely. Eventually, newer officers look to you. They copy how you speak to victims, search suspects, record force, and behave when tired. Your habits become their informal training. One day, a timeline does not match, a search was poorly justified, or a colleague's account differs from the recording. The easiest option is to minimize it. Integrity requires accuracy. You correct the record, inform a supervisor, and preserve relevant material. Some colleagues may resent the disruption, but public trust cannot survive if truth becomes negotiable when inconvenient. Years later, you guide a nervous recruit through their first shift. You teach them to slow down, explain their powers, preserve evidence, ask what they are missing, and treat people with dignity. Being a police officer is not simply catching criminals, it is protecting victims while respecting suspects' rights, using authority carefully, and making imperfect decisions under intense public scrutiny. The briefing room is quiet again. A radio, notebook, body-worn camera, and folded high-visibility jacket remain behind. The question was whether you could carry the responsibility without losing judgment, integrity, or humanity.